All right. Today at Solus Partners, we are really excited to have Susan Hunt of Surge Consulting with us. Susan, could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you came to form Surge?
Sure. Thank you, Stephen, for having me. I appreciate that. Surge was a company that was kind of developed. I call myself a little bit of an accidental CEO. So I had always had this concept of sales in a box when I was a sales executive at Nuance. And what I mean by that is when we were acquired, we were literally picked up as a sales organization and stuck right in the middle of this organization, and we became the entire sales arm. And it was an organization of people that was really very close to one another and extremely talented, from marketing to comms to sales directors, so on and so forth. So, a couple of years ago, I was on a trip in Australia with some of these people, and I realized that we had an entire company sitting there of people that were kind of semi-retired. Everything from CFO to CMO to CRO. So executives that had worked in startups, mid-size companies, as large as Fortune 500 companies, all C-level people that all had extraordinary backgrounds, much of it in AI and speech recognition, and also had extraordinary networks. So I started this company. I got this collective together, if you will, and we started Surge Growth Consulting to help customers, deal with, a gap in headcount in a bigger company, or the smaller companies can't typically really afford a C-level person like a CFO or CMO or CRO initially, but they can afford a fractional person who comes in and does the heavy lifting for them and advises them on what they need to do, over the next 6, 12, 18 months. We deal with a lot of technology companies. We deal with a lot of smaller startup companies. A lot of the founders are engineers. So they really do require a lot of these expertise after they've done their initial round of funding. So we might go in initially with the CFO, who works whatever 1 day a week for them. It does all of the messy stuff that the CEO doesn't want to do, and then we'll progress to coming up with a framework for storytelling. Then we'll progress to coming up with a framework for actually building out a sales organization. We can help with fundraising, storytelling around to create fundraising opportunities. So we do a lot of different things, and we're pretty plug and play. You can bring us in completely and be a whole company for you for a period of time while you hire up your people, or just one at a time, which is what we see mostly.
What would be the typical profile of a group coming to you guys?
So it's really all over the place. So we have because we're well known in the AI space, we do have a lot of startups in the AI space because we actually know a lot of the founders. We've worked with them in the past at other companies. They've gotten some initial seed or A round completed, and they know us, so we're trusted advisors to them. So we get a lot of that, which is great. That's really fun. It's very different than like a mid-sized company. Right now I'm working with one CEO who they do about $80 million a year, and they're getting ready to go public. So I came in, assessed the sales organization. They had some issues in the sales organization that they had to clean up. They replaced a CRO during the time that I was there. And now they've brought in a president that can help them figure out how to get the everything moving in a great direction and go public. So that's another piece that we do. The flip side is we have also worked with very large companies. So we can go in any direction because we've all worked across all of those spectrums for dozens of years.
It sounds like you have a really experienced team. Could you explain a little bit more on how that came to be and then what you guys offer relative to other consulting groups?
Yeah, sure. I had put my plaque out, I guess you would say. Truthfully, the way that it actually happened is I had worked with a consultant, a chair of Deloitte years ago when I was at Salesforce, and he called me and said, "Hey, I have a company that needs help. Do you know anyone that can come in and look at the sales situation for me?" So I was like, "Well, I have time. I can do that." So I went in and I did that. So I was referred by a consultant to a company that is a consulting company. I was a consultant. And I went in, I looked at their business, I developed a strategy for them, I gave them a lot of recommendations, and they took most of them. So that was kind of how it started. And I thought, this is like really obvious good work for me personally. I love doing this kind of thing. But I also have all of these really talented people. So I let people know that I was doing this, and I can't remember how many interactions on LinkedIn about my first post of this, but I got thousands of interactions from people that I had worked with over the last 30 years saying, hey, this is really cool. I think that this person might be interested in joining you, or this company really needs your help. So we got a really big response. And then I started pulling the people that I know well, that are well known in the industry, and seeing if they would come and join the organization or the collaboration with me. And a bunch of them did, and they're really talented, strong people. Giving smaller companies and large companies access to this type of talent, I think is invaluable, especially to the smaller companies, because they just can't, until they get to a certain point, they just can't attract this type of talent, and they probably can't afford it either on a full-time basis. So having access to it has been great. So that's pretty much the way that we started the whole thing.
I mean, fascinating origin story on that. Would you be able to describe some of the engagements that your team is working on currently?
Sure. So there's a whole bunch of them. Okay. So depending on what what type of person is out there, our CFO works on a lot of different types, smaller companies, kind of, seed level. Maybe they have an A round, and really get them ready for, getting a larger round of funding. We have our communications officer does a bunch with sort of mid-sized companies that really need to reframe their story. So he does a lot of storytelling with mid-sized companies. Right now, I'm working with 3 different CEOs. They are all 3 AI companies that do very different things. One particular is Permanence AI, which is a group of really talented AI engineers that have worked at Facebook, Google, Intel. Like, these are the real deal, these people. They are doing recoding. So in other words, Black Duck, for example, everybody uses them to find all of their severe issues, right, that need correction. And then an army of people go and do some really boring coding that nobody really likes to do. And it takes a long time. Permanence AI literally has automated that process at a very, very high accuracy rate. So one example of this is they did 2 man-years of coding in 2 weeks with AI. So to me, this is a technology that will span every single company. I think it's a massive opportunity in AI for real impact, and it's doing work that people really don't want to do. There's not a lot of people that want to, spend their days changing C++ to Java. It's pretty boring work for an engineer. So automating it makes perfect sense. It's automated. They don't take bathroom breaks. They don't take lunch breaks. The AI doesn't sleep. So it's a continuous thing that's just happening. I find it fascinating. I think they're going to be a really successful company. They're out of New York. The CEO is Joseph Hackman, who has a phenomenal background in AI, and they're just really solid organization. And that's what I mean. When people say that they have AI expertise, they need to look at that company, because they have AI expertise. They're Harvard PhDs, they're MIT PhDs, they're really talented people. So I love working with them. I work with them a day a week right now. We're getting sales going there. At some point, we'll start to build an actual sales organization in the next probably 6 months, and then expand out. But it's exciting. And then I'm working with 2 other CEOs also as fractional CRO, who just went through a big integration. I was at the company that was bought. I started there. It was bought 2 weeks later. And then the company that did the buying got rid of their CRO. So suddenly I was a CRO for 2 companies, like 2 weeks into starting. But that was okay because what it allowed me to do, because I have a lot of integration, especially around sales organization experience from Nuance. We were very acquisitive. We, integrated probably 100 separate sales teams during our time there. So I actually felt and feel I'm still there very valuable in my experience with regards to integrating sales organizations, figuring out who are the right salespeople, figuring out what team is more appropriate for the future, because they were two very different type of sales teams. One was very, consultative type of selling, and the other was kind of burn them and churn them, throw the software over the wall kind of team. So those are two very different structures. So figuring out how to pull those structures together was one of the things that I did. So that's been a really exciting project. And that has been all over the board. I use DISC and a few other surveying kind of groups to help me kind of understand the psychology of the sales organization, and then make a lot of recommendations based on what comes out of these surveys, which is great. It's much better than I could do it one-on-one, take an hour to speak to every single person in the organization, and then, collectively put something together as a recommendation. Or you could do this. And I like this because it's a lot deeper and it gives them a lot of information. It also gives them kind of training materials for the salespeople that they plan to keep on. And then, of course, we could do a lot with broad marketing. We have really, really expert marketing people in the tech business, from the tech business, that have, Steve Chambers, for example, has brought Nuance from a very, very small company to a market cap of like $7 billion during his time there. And he's a remarkable marketer. So we do a lot of work in that area as well.
Well, it sounds like, just from the kind of brief preview there, that you guys really set up groups for long-term success. Could you talk a little bit more into that?
I mean, it's all about long-term success. Why bother doing it if you're not going to be successful at it, So we absolutely want to set them out. We do have this native knowledge that's really hard to come by, in that, what happens with smaller CEOs, newer companies, is they get guidance from a lot of people. And not all of the people that are giving them guidance are actually operators, right? Have ever been operators. We're all operators. We were forced to deal with a quarter over quarter over quarter over quarter in a publicly traded company, which is, very little room for mistake when you're doing that. And we did that for, I don't even know how many dozens of quarters. So what we can do when we come in is we could say, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. If you do this, on the other hand, this is probably the likely outcome. And it kind of, if they trust us, and they should, because we do know what we're doing, it shortcuts a lot of mistakes. One of the most expensive mistakes that smaller startups make is hiring a bunch of the wrong kind of salespeople. And then they can't understand why their business isn't moving properly. Well, it's because you hired absolutely the wrong type of salesperson for what you're trying to do. They don't have any experience in the vertical, or they don't have any experience selling to the type of customers, or they don't understand your product set. So we'll do an analysis and we'll say, this is the archetype that you need for your business. This is the sales type of person that you want to hire. And then I actually do have, because I was getting so many calls, I actually do have a headhunter as part of our organization who knows all of these people and can just go straight after them for a customer if they want us to do that, or we'll work with their headhunter, whatever they like. But we let them access our network of thousands of really good enterprise software salespeople as well.
I mean, that sounds like a fascinating enterprise universe that you guys can really not only bridge between the enterprise, but then also bring early stage tech to. How does that work with your group?
As far as bringing early stage tech to customers?
Right. And vice versa.
So, yeah. So because a lot of us have really long careers in selling to a specific vertical, for example, my specific vertical was telco. So I did work in telco with Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, all of them for years and years, 20 years, right? So those relationships are still pretty strong. I mean, obviously, many have retired, many have left to go other places, mostly to bigger jobs and other customers we want to talk to, by the way. But we have the credibility, I think, to go in and say, listen, this is a tech that probably will never hit your radar, or at least not for 5 more years. But I think it's something that you can use in your X environment. This would help X because we know these environments so well from working with them over a long period of time. We know where their gaps and their pains typically are as well. And there's a lot of us because in enterprise sales, for example, a really good salesperson who gets really marred in all of the details of the systems and the people at, say, a Citibank, for example, typically will go to the next technology company and say, I'm an expert in selling to Citi. So that means they continue to have all of these great relationships. So if someone on our team doesn't have the relationship, we're literally one salesperson away from an easy introduction. And I actually did put a program together within my organization, which is kind of a group of virtual salespeople that we pay to give high level introductions to certain customers, smaller tech companies. And then if we actually get a deal done, we'll give a percentage of the deal. We'll pay the percentage of the deal to the person that helped us get there. And obviously we do this in a very cautious way. We don't want to burn any bridges. They don't want to burn any bridges with their customers. So they will ask their customer if it's something that they're interested in instead of us just kind of, jumping on them all of a sudden. And that's worked really well. And it's really helped a lot of smaller tech companies.
Now, kind of segueing on that a little bit, but if you were an early stage founder and you guys brought in a potential intro to an enterprise tech, how do you help that small founder maintain that relationship with enterprise?
I mean, if they have an enterprise customer, they need a rep. They'll need an entire organization to support it. Because once one of the things that's nice about working with enterprise customers is typically if you do a good job, you will be rewarded with more business. So they have to have this mindset that this is the starting point. They need the support for the starting point, and then they'll have to build out a team. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation because the new customer drives their funding, right? So we've got customers, VCs are interested in, become more interested or willing to throw more money. Then they have the money, they've got to build out the teams to support the customers. So it's really a very tricky needle to thread, and every single founder has to figure out how to thread it. And I think that we're really good at helping them do that.
That's really encouraging, and it seems pretty unique, especially within the AI space. And when considering that space, how do you guys sort out the true sound versus the noise for enterprise and others?
It's kind of easy for us because we know the players. So we can look at, who's in an organization, where they've been, and whether or not they're really going to be a true AI company. And I mean, AI's been around for a long time. Like speech recognition is AI. Doing anything that replicates human work, figuring out how to do that in an automated way is AI. So it's not as new as everybody thinks it is, but there are a lot of new players that confuse customers at this point. So what I tell customers is, what are you solving for? Like, what is going to be the thing that's going to impact your business in a meaningful way? Either reducing crummy work that people have to do that nobody wants to do and they have a hiring problem because it's such bad work. There's lots of those jobs. You can't afford to, we do a lot with AI and agent call centers. We've done that for years and years and years. They can't either take all the calls. For example, airlines have what are called IROPS, which is unexpected interruptions like weather on a regular basis. They cannot staff up in time when a storm hits to deal with everything, to deal with reservation cancellations, to deal with Newark Airport, which is a nightmare right now, to deal with the fact that their employees who have to get from one flight to another, captains and stewards, that's probably not a proper word, can't get to their flights on time, so they've got problems there. There's no way to manage that with human beings. You cannot just throw 1,000 people at that all of a sudden. So the only way that they can deal with it and have a good customer experience is through the use of AI in one form or another, whether it's automated bots, it's speech recognition to change reservations. You need some sort of automation. So those are like really obvious things because that drives costs out of the business. It gives the customer a good experience or a better experience than being on hold for 4 hours. And it accomplishes the goal. It solves the problem to a certain degree. The thing that I was telling you about with permanence AI is another example of not only is it going to drive tons of engineering costs out of the business, it's going to allow these engineers that could not possibly deal with all of the issues that they have in old code to work on things that may actually be important to the business going forward. I mean, you don't want your best developers spending their time working on converting old code so you don't have these security exposures, right? You want them working on things that are meaningful to your business, whatever that is. So we help them kind of walk through that and kind of find what's the big bang for the buck when it comes to AI. And we can direct them. We do a lot of research and things, a lot of research on the AI companies that are popping up and how they really are going to matter to somebody at SAP or Citibank or JP Morgan Chase or Delta. What's it going to do? What's it going to be? Why is it going to be meaningful? And can it be trusted? Is the company that is saying they're doing all of these things actually able to do what they're saying, which I think is another bit of a problem. And, one more point, what I'm seeing a lot of, which is sort of too bad, is people coming up with better AI or what they think is better speech recognition or a better AI in call centers. What they don't understand is that you don't walk into a Delta and say, I've got a better speech recognition thing for you, or I've got a better call center AI, because the way that stuff is integrated into their systems is so deep. It would have to be a miracle kind of tech. And I don't even know what that would be for them to like rip and replace all of that stuff. So what is a better approach is if you have a specific component technology that can solve a very specific problem for them, rather than just saying, I'm going to get 0.25% better recognition from speech, which is not meaningful to them. You'll get much further in those kind of accounts. So I look for those kind of technologies in AI, the ones that are changing the way people will do business and will do work and will relieve big problems, rather than these incremental things that just are not going to solve. It's just a really hard sell, and it doesn't really make any sense to a customer. Like you can't walk in with that as being your value prop in AI. We are, 0.25% better, more accurate.
Right.
If you're 20% more accurate, then you can walk in there with that. But like a little tiny bit, no, they're just not gonna do it.
I mean, that's fascinating enterprise insight there. And I guess considering all these stakeholders that you guys serve and touch into, where do you see AI in general going over the next year or so?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I actually think it's the most important technology, certainly of my lifetime, maybe of several lifetimes coming up. It's really, really powerful. It was for years and years, it was kind of like on a slow roll. And then with ChatGPT and what has happened in the last 2 years, the amount of change that I've seen is unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. So I really do think that it's going to service so many different components of our work as human beings, replace so much human work over the next 5 years that like my granddaughter, who's 3, will not even understand that people did this work at any point in their lives. She won't believe it. So I don't know where it's going. I just know that it is getting incrementally better based on my customers by the hour, by the minute. So it's very exciting.
And kind of speaking from the shoes of an early stage AI founder, when would they know that they're qualified to work with groups like Surge?
They're qualified. I mean, if they have money and they're ready to go in a certain area and they need anything figured out that they can't figure out, they're ready to work with Surge, even on a small scale, They almost always need some sort of fractional CFO almost immediately. Like hiring a full-time CFO in a startup with 4 people doesn't make any sense. But hiring a fractional one, somebody who works 1 day a week with you, makes a lot of sense. They pay the bills, they make sure you're on track, they figure out what you need to do to raise more money, so that makes a lot of sense. So it could be very early stage, but they're also not the cheapest consultants in the world. They're pretty expensive. They're not as expensive as AI engineers, but they are pretty expensive consultants. So there has to be a reasonable amount of money in the business to start. And I mean like a couple of million. I don't mean like, 100 million. I mean, we can go as small as that. In some cases, like lead generation, the sweet spot for our CMO that is really an expert in lead generation is like 25 million annually. When you really want to ramp that up, so he would come in at that point. So different practices are better at different points in time for different size companies.
Sure. Well, and it sounds like you guys can make a pretty custom and tailored growth path regardless of the group.
Totally custom. All of it's totally custom. I mean, there are certain things that we do. There's frameworks that we use consistently, financial models that we use to kind of expose what it's going to cost them and what they can expect from a bookings and sales perspective over a 3-year period of time if they do this, this, and this. But it's very custom to each customer. And there are some customers that we've had to say, we don't really think that we're a good fit for you because we're not in XYZ space. We're definitely a high tech kind of a consulting company. We don't have to just do that. We can definitely work with other types of companies, but there are some that like we don't have the sales resources that would be appropriate for them if we tried to pull in salespeople. So we're pretty honest about that. But that's like maybe 1 in 10 companies that we talk to. It's not that high of a percentage, really.
And I guess considering you guys have a pretty wide variety of clients and groups that you're working with, what is it like to work at and with Surge as part of your team?
We very much become a part of the company. So we're not really Surge. We have an email as the person that we're working for. So we very, very much become part of the executive team when we're in there. And we haven't, we've had really good experiences with all of that. Like we come in, we show them how to like kind of appropriately position us so people understand we're here for X number of months or whatever, and this is our mission, this is our goal, this is what we're trying to accomplish. So that everybody feels comfortable. We're not coming in to, take someone's job. We're literally there to drive the business for them. And the thing that's really great about this is a CRO, for example, a full-time CRO will get sucked into all kinds of things. A fractional CRO won't. They are focused on what they're there to do. So the minutia kind of internal meetings that a full-time CRO tends to get sucked into, that takes away from focusing on the actual, building revenue, building a sales organization, training a sales organization, getting the revenue in the door. They won't use me for that because it doesn't make any sense that that would be how I would spend my time. So that just makes us really productive very, very quickly. And I think that that's a big benefit to companies too. You know how you get sucked into the politics if you're full-time somewhere. When you're a consultant, you really don't get sucked into the politics, especially if it's a short-term thing. There's just no time or energy for that. What there's time and energy for is actually getting the work done.
Well, it sounds like you guys have a really effective and tailor-made approach. Where do you guys see Surge going over the next 12 to 24 months?
Well, that's a really good question. It's really kind of an unusual organization. There's not a lot of companies that do this work, first of all, in the way that we framed it with this level of talent. I do see our bench growing over the next 24 months because I'm still in contact on a daily basis with other people that kind of want to join the organization. I mean, we're 2 years old, so we're pretty much a startup too. But I feel that we can really expand and, just do great things over the next 24 months. We've really got a lot of momentum over the last 6 months. And as we get out there more, I think more and more people will be interested in working with us. And as these AI companies grow a little bit more, they're going to be kind of ready for us to come in and help them. So I'm excited about that as well. And then we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm kind of shocked that more headhunters don't have fractional practices. I think they should. They're always there's only one that I know of that I do work with, by the way, that actually has a fractional C-level practice where they headhunt for C-level people. So, I mean, maybe at some point we might be bought by one of those headhunter companies to come in and be their fractional organization, help them with that. You never know.
That's fascinating. What are some of the highlights of your team, or at least like from their experience? What are the things that they enjoy at Surge?
We love working with each other. We've always loved working with each other. I mean, everybody is really handpicked at Surge. Like we have a definite, you got to be a cool person to work at Surge attitude. We don't like troublemakers. We all work really, really well together, which doesn't mean we agree all the time. We don't. We definitely don't. It's a bunch of C-level people working together in one place. But we really do all like each other. We really respect each other. We work really, really well to on all of our projects. If anybody ever needed to bring in a full suite of executives at one time, it would be very, very powerful for them if we came in and did that, because we have successfully built, taken companies public together, sold companies together, acquired companies together, everything from legal to finance to the marketing to the comms to the sales environment. So yeah, we love working together. And I think people love working with us too. Like the people that are on in this organization have just really well respected followings, and people have loved working with them. I mean, Steve Chambers specifically is one of the finest human beings I've ever known and one of the best leaders I've ever had. So they were all really respected people that people like working with. So
Well, it sounds like you've got a great team that can cultivate some of the best in AI. I mean, hats off to you.
thank you. Thank you. We're excited about it. We really are.
You should be. It's rare to come across a group like that with such a deep talent, but then laser keen focus on AI and some of the trends behind it. So appreciate you having coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate talking to you. You asked some really insightful questions that made me think, and it's great to meet you.
Likewise, Susan. Thank you for your time today.